All right, we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Drew Carpenter, Home Office Advisor here at Sequent Planning. Thank you for attending session 6 of our business development training series, Ready to Double. Today's session is all about seminar marketing. Our esteemed leader, Chelsea Keeler, who typically leads these sessions, is out of the office this week. And some of you may have recently attended our seminar boot camp that we hosted here in Omaha a few weeks ago, featuring a deep dive on seminars with the one and only Frank Maselli. So between Chelsea and Frank Maselli, I'm in a real following the Beatles on Ed Sullivan situation here. So I appreciate your grace in advance. If you haven't yet, I would strongly recommend viewing our prior sessions, all of which are available in the follow-up email you'll receive after this session. Last week, we discussed COIs and referrals, which are a foundational growth component for many practices. And as critical as those are, they can be hard to scale. This isn't, there are various other marketing strategies that we support and that many of our advisors and agents pursue. And this isn't a commentary on the effectiveness of any other method. But we have seen at Sequent, at SMS, and at FFIG a consistent pattern of success derived from seminar marketing. The disclosures, everyone memorize those. So without further ado, our agenda for today. We'll discuss the math behind the ROI, the importance of a systematic approach, and the factors critical for creating a successful seminar strategy. This is really an overview and a compilation of best practices that I hope will give you a starting point to begin incorporating seminars into your business development plan. So are seminars worth it? Well, yeah, obviously, hence the inclusion of them in our business development series. But in a serious note, we have plenty of evidence from advisors who have created significant growth from their seminar process. At SMS specifically, 8 of the top 10 annuity producers are using seminars as their primary lead generation process. But notice I say process. Seminars are worth it if they are treated as a business development system. We hear stories frequently of folks who attempt seminars, then stop because they don't see the ROI. To be truly effective at scale, they need to be a repeatable, consistent part of the overall marketing strategy. This needs to be measured and tracked, and the process needs to be refined over time. And the only way to do that is to be systematic. But let's start with the numbers. I took this from Acquire Up, who I'll touch on a bit in more detail later. And this was presented at their annual conference that some of us attended earlier this year. Now, some of the assumptions here may be generous, but this is derived from their actual performance data from advisors using the platform. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. So if we assume 30 qualified households or individuals attend an event and we convert at a 5% rate, that gives us 1.5 new clients per seminar. Obviously, we don't get half clients, so this is assuming we're doing more than one seminar, which is going to be a common theme here. But if the average asset per client is just $500,000, which is probably on the low end of who we're targeting typically for our seminar marketing strategies, that means we can expect to pick up 750,000 in assets per seminar. At a 60-40 AUM annuity split, right? 60% of the money going into AUM, 40 going to annuities, and assuming a 1% AUM fee and 7% in street comp, that translates to 22,500 in year one revenue per seminar. Well, ROI, the I stands for investment, which I haven't included here, but I'll come back to that here in a little bit. But I think just the numbers, the raw numbers, are fairly compelling. But rather than taking their word for it, let's reverse engineer it. This is the math that every advisor or agent ought to do on their own before they get started, at least in my opinion. The formula can be applied to any seminar platform, whether you're using a vendor or doing it yourself, whether they're educational or dinner. It's just the math behind the ROI. First question is, what is my total spend? And how much production do I need in total to break even? So I'm going to use some round numbers here. And again, the cost per seminar really varies wildly, right? I mean, you can see here I have 1,500 to 10,000 per event. The costs are going to vary depending upon who we're using for marketing, what those marketing costs are. Are we paying for food? Is there a cost for the venue? But just for the sake of argument, let's say we're doing 6 seminars at $6,000 a pop, right? That's a spend of $36,000. So I know I need to get at least $36,000 in production to cover my costs. Well, the math here is pretty straightforward. $550,000 in fixed index annuity premium at a 7% street comp payout is 38.5, right? So just two cases at 225,000, which is, frankly on the low end potentially for a FIA case, and we're a break even, right? And if we have 15 to 30 households at 6 seminars, we're at 90 to 180 prospects. That's just a 1 to 2% conversion rate, which I hope that we all can achieve with enough reps and enough at bats. So it's very straightforward math to get to a break even. But if it was just about break even, nobody would do it, right? We certainly wouldn't include it in our business development series about doubling our practice. The upside is much, much greater than just breaking even. But again, I would encourage anybody to think about before I start engaging with a vendor and I start evaluating the costs that they're quoting me, like realistically, what kind of production do I need? And everybody's payouts are different and fee structure is different and business mix is different. So this is going to be individualized, but this is critical before we start thinking about, is it worth it? I mean, worth it relative to what, right? Um, so before we get into best practices, let's talk about worst practices, right? Why do seminars fail? Um, there are a number of failure points in the seminar process, but typically it's the same reasons, right? A poor topic, something uninteresting or not relevant to the audience we're attracting, poor presentation or delivery, ineffective appointment setting, poor follow-up, and perhaps most importantly, not being a systematic marketing process. So you may be thinking to yourself, Drew, you keep saying systematic. What do you mean? Well, I'm glad you asked in my imagination. This needs to be a part of your overall marketing strategy and budget. If you don't have a marketing strategy or budget, that's a problem, right? We need to start there. As they say, there's no such thing as a free lunch, nor are there free dinner seminars or client acquisition programs. So how much are we spending on marketing currently? And what is our ROI? Can we even measure it? Like if if we could allocate it to a different strategy that is inherently trackable and repeatable, would that make sense than kind of blindly pursuing whatever our ad hoc marketing strategy has been to date? Now, if you do have a coherent developed marketing strategy and budget, terrific, right? What part of that budget is effective? Are we getting ROI on? And what part would be open for reallocation? Or should we allocate more to our marketing budget? Now, with that said, one consistent message we have heard in making this process systematic, if you're going to do one seminar, do 6. Right now, sometimes that feedback comes from the vendors who obviously have a vested interest in you doing more than one seminar. But we can set aside the cynicism because this is feedback we get from advisors who have successfully done it too. You need reps, right? I mean, the first one won't be perfect. Frankly, it might not even be good. But if you're intentional from the outset and you're willing to improve, then you can refine each time. And again, as long as you close enough business to cover costs, then this is free training. You also need sample size to do any meaningful analysis of performance. And I think 6 is the bare minimum to get a sense of trends. It's enough to be able to evaluate what works, what doesn't, and what we need to change. So let's get into the details a little bit, starting with what topics to cover. At a high level, we need to pick topics that are relevant to prospects. And remember about these clients, these prospects, they're bombarded with ads every day, right? They get them in the mail, they get them via digital, they see them on their screens, and yet they're still attending seminars en masse. Why? Right? Well, they're looking for something they haven't found yet. So focus on problems that you know they have, and perhaps more importantly, that you know you can solve. Now, consistently, we hear that there are 2 topics that perform really well relative to their peers, and that's taxes and retirement and estate planning. These topics are great because they're self-selecting. I mean, obviously, if we're doing targeted messaging or targeted marketing to prospects, we have an idea of, how much they have in assets. But people aren't going to attend a taxes and retirement seminar if they don't have assets that are subject to taxation, right? And they're not going to attend an estate planning seminar if there's no estate to plan. So they're self-selecting, but additionally, these are emotional topics, right? I mean, no client or prospect wants their loved ones scrambling to figure out what their wishes or intents were upon their death or how to split up their assets. Similarly, people have very strong feelings about taxation. I've yet to meet a client that wants to pay more in taxes than they have to. Um, I will just pause here and say one question we get a lot from advisors and agents is, hey, these topics sound like you need to be an attorney or a CPA to talk about. I'm not a CPA. I can't talk about taxes. Well, that's not true, right? I mean, we're not talking about specific tax advice, but I would venture to say many people on this call are talking about Roth conversions. They're talking about the tax efficiency of insurance products. They're talking about the order of withdrawals. Those are topics that are heavily featured in a taxes and retirement seminar. Additionally, estate planning, you could just allude to the need to work with an attorney or not, depending upon your situation. But discussing the actions that an advisor takes to bypass things like probate is enough on its own to provide really significant education. Now, we have presentations and materials for these topics and others that we can provide or discuss in more detail one-on-one. But again, we just consistently hear this feedback that these two topics perform better from both an attendance and conversion rate than many other topics. There are other topics at work. There are some topics I recommend against, which I'm happy to discuss one-on-one. People have questions about that. But I guess, at a high level, whatever topic you select or approach you take, I'd really strongly recommend starting simple and mastering not just the presentation, but the entire process, and then pivoting to a strategy that aligns with your niche or specialty if you've identified that, right? Harkening back to an earlier session that Chelsea led. The more specific and niche that we can get in our marketing, the better. But if we present ourselves as an expert and we have our group of, say we're focusing on physicians and we've got 30 physicians in the audience and we haven't yet figured out how to set appointments during our seminar, we're setting ourselves up for failure, right? So start simple, master the basics, and then pivot to more nuanced or niche topics. Another question we get is setting, right? Where should I do it? You have two primary types, dinner or educational. Dinner, obviously, meaning we're hosted at a restaurant, typically with plated dinner served. Educational would refer to strictly educational content, typically delivered at a library, community center, etc. There's some nuance here about who these nonprofits will allow in. Again, a topic for another conversation. But what's interesting to me is Acquire Up tells us that it's about a 50-50 distribution across all of their users between dinner and educational. I mean, I was surprised when I heard that because I just assumed that the most successful producers using seminars were buying steaks for everyone, right? In fact, when we were at that Acquire Up conference earlier this year, two of the top producers they featured have both grown exclusively through educational only. And I mean, like real growth, right? From 100 to 400 million in AUM in less than 5 years each. In fact, it was pretty entertaining hearing them talk about their preference for educational. Both of them just kind of cheapskates, right? Said, I don't like feeding people I don't know. Fair enough, right? Whatever matches your style. Now, one of the presenters has since evolved to add dinner for his targeted high net worth campaigns, but he's still doing the bread and butter, no pun intended here, in the educational space. Part of the decision is going to be dictated by the market that you're in. Some markets are saturated with advisors and folks that have adopted doing seminars, and a dinner is kind of expected or par for the course, or we just don't get really good attendance without dinner. This would be a good plug for partnering with a vendor who can help navigate the local market. But frankly, you probably know as well as they do if you're engaged with your competition in the community. But part of it is advisor driven too. You got to ask yourself, am I more of an entertainer or an educator? Which setting best fits my style and which is more representative of my practice or the experience of being my client? Just a brief side note on webinars. It's a different avenue, frankly, we could spend an entire separate session on webinars. I don't want to spend a lot of time here because I think it's a different dynamic, and really, targeted for a different type of practice potentially. I think it's best executed when combined with additional video content, particularly for prospecting for people that are looking to engage with us online. Then not having a web presence, not having video presence, is not going to fulfill their expectations for moving forward and working with you. Certainly, people have successful webinars without video content, but we have seen those two strategies dovetail nicely. Harkening back to the 8 out of the 10 producers at SMS who are using seminars, while the other two are using videos, right? So video marketing, I don't need to tell you, obviously gaining a lot of traction in the industry. So marketing, how do we drive attendance? The methods and procedures are pretty straightforward, right? You have old school direct mail, still very effective, particularly for older boomers, right? Folks that are comfortable getting mail, they like getting mail, they're used to checking it, and they get a lot of seminar invites all the time. Vendors can help coach on best practices for using it, or certainly it's something you could pursue as a DIY approach. Digital marketing also effective. Frequently combining the two provides better results. But I want to hit on existing clientele before I talk about working with a vendor or selecting partners. I think this is an overlooked opportunity for certain types of practices. So if you have an existing clientele from a different product line and you're looking to expand into a new product line, so for instance, I will say a Medicare agency looking to expand into financial services, and we haven't had significant traction with our existing clientele yet. This is a terrific opportunity to re-engage with folks that have stayed with you and renewed their policies with you over time. Obviously, they're happy enough to stay as clients. And so marketing to them is a low cost approach that's also, frankly, kind of low stakes, right? We get a practice on the folks that are already a warm reception from an audience standpoint. I would also maybe hit on annuity practices looking to add AUM. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could look at that, but if you have an existing clientele that you haven't fully maximized a relationship with, that's a great low cost way to start where we don't need to outsource. We have the ability to market to them. And for those, I would probably, focus on educational, right? I mean, why spend additional money? Now we're talking very low cost. So let's talk logistics. I really think a partner like AcquireUp, and they're not the only one, right? And just let me say this, I'm not paid to use their name a bunch, although the amount of referring I do to them, I should probably get a quarter zip or a polo or something at this point. But with that said, a partner like AcquireUp, I think is the most efficient way to get started. For a number of reasons. I mean, they're really good at this. This is all they do. They provide targeted marketing, so we're finding the right prospects consistently. They offer a simplified process for both advisors and clients where you can track campaigns. The tracking allows you to evaluate effectiveness, and they can also provide guidance and coaching based, on what to do in your market based upon the extensive intelligence they've picked up from working in those markets. AcquireUp is a known player. SMS has relationships with others, including Launchpad. There's a lot of vendors. I don't have a dog in the fight, but I would recommend starting there. What I have seen is folks, get tired of the cost, and once they see, how the sausage gets made, so to speak, they say, well, I could do this, right? And I could do it at scale for a lower cost. If you feel like you want to take on that endeavor yourself from the jump, God bless, right? I mean, it's certainly doable, but there are so many variables to control that I think it makes a lot of sense to partner. Again, going to be individual depending upon your practice and your disposition. So there are plenty of things, though, from a logistics standpoint, that whether you outsource marketing and registration, that you need to take ownership of, right? First, the atmosphere, the vibe, right? What are we projecting? What we want prospects to feel a sense of who we are as their advisor, what it will be like to be their client. This is not rocket science. First impressions go a long way in our business. The setup. I mean, this is a small detail, but it's critical. Are you passing out note sheets? Is your assistant passing out note sheets? Are you using name tags? Are you providing handouts or takeaways? I mean, all of these are decisions that need to be made intentionally. A couple of recommendations. I mean, I would highly, highly recommend having an assistant or a spouse or a friend, somebody there who can walk and chew gum at the same time and doesn't mind being in front of a crowd, to assist with check-in and post seminar follow-up, right? A lot of advisors suggest or frankly state without any suggestion that you shouldn't be present at check-in at all. Most of the most successful seminar adopters, I mean, they treat it like they're an entertainer or presenter, right? I'm on, I present, and I leave, and my staff handles the setup, the takedown, ensuring everyone had a good time and getting everyone checked in and checked out. I'll use a real example. I was down in Florida visiting a referral partner. The office does 3 a week, every week, all year long, like clockwork, right? And just little things that were really intentional that set them apart. He sits in the booth at the restaurant facing the venue, or excuse me, facing the event room, but he's hidden, right? So as people walk past, he gets to see everybody walk in, see them interact with his assistant, sees them get settled in, make sure things are going well, and kind of gets a read on people and how they're behaving, and then walks right in and presents it. He's already had a chance to evaluate the whole crowd. Little things that, again, going back to an earlier slide, the only way to learn that is to get reps, right? I mean, you need practice to identify things like, hey, I shouldn't have done that. I should do this differently. Let's talk about appointment setting. So I mentioned this as a point of failure. Frankly, it's one of the most common points of failure. Setting appointments in the event is critical, right? You just did a great job, right? You nailed it. Attendees are engaged, they're interested, they're still here, right? You know who in the crowd was engaged. Not everyone is going to be. Some people are there for a free meal. But for those folks who are engaged, why let them leave? We got them right here, right? Book the appointment right there in person before they leave. And anybody who doesn't book, make it mandatory that they give you their information before they leave, right? In a friendly way or not so friendly. It's up to you, your style. But I heard a great line about this from another advisor. So, look, I've got all your information already. I was able to find you to invite you to this. I just want to put a face to a name. But frankly, then you're able to go look and say, okay, this person was engaged, but they didn't book. And then you're segmenting out how you want to follow up, which leads me to follow up, right? This is a critical component for the folks that don't book. Mentioned it earlier. If I've got 90 prospects and I close 2 of them, 88 prospects are not just nobodies, right? They go in our follow-up list. And so making sure you're capturing as much of that information as possible sets you up for success. So let's talk about the presentation itself, right? This is showtime. This is your chance to shine. This is an extended audition for individual clients at scale, right? We have the opportunity to demonstrate our trustworthiness, our credibility, our expertise, our ability to connect emotionally and intellectually with our clients for 15 to 30 people at once. I mean, where else do you get that opportunity? The whole point of the seminar, though, is to book appointments, right? And the whole point of appointments is to convert. Nobody makes money at the seminar except for the restaurant and Acquire Up, right? You make money in the appointment. So always be closing to the appointment. And what does that mean? What does that sound like? Well, trying to demonstrate or trying to set expectations for the experience, right? What you need from them, what they can expect from you, what value you provide without commitment. Everybody's practice is different, but think about what you can deliver or promise to deliver in that seminar that then you can follow through with in the appointment so the client has this cohesive experience from introduction to conversion. And I'll add too, I mean, this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but seriously, own it, right? Like you're a great advisor. Clients would be better off if they worked with you, and you know it, right? So embrace the challenge with energy and passion, and most importantly, a willingness to improve. I've given a lot of presentations. None of them were perfect, including this one. But I like to think that I've used each one as an opportunity to improve. And as far as the passion and energy goes, I mean, some of the best presentations I've seen at seminars, you can just viscerally tell that the advisor cares about the topic. And so don't pick something you don't care about, right? Try to find something that's relevant and you're passionate about, make it your own and refine it and hone it as it goes on. But again, you can't do that if you just do one seminar. Frankly, I don't know if you could do it if you do six. And I think you need to be engaged with this if you want to do it. Um, Obviously, there's a cost associated with it, but having the runway, having the opportunity to improve is going to make you better in the long run. Whoops, back one. So some kind of tips pulled from others on presentation tactics and strategies. Having an effective opening and closing is critical. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a power close, as Frank Maselli would refer to it, but he does have a few good ones. He talks about the harbor pilot analogy. I think you can probably find videos of this online. We'll share his takeaways, his website, because there's a lot of free resources. And for those that don't know Frank Maselli, I've name dropped him like we're best friends or something. He is a former advisor. Who had a lot of success and then transitioned to becoming a coach, has done countless seminars over the years, and is really a performance coach at this point, working directly with advisors or with agencies or with groups. I've seen him speak a couple of times. He's terrific, right? I mean, he's like a God-given stand-up comedian. He's got a gift for speaking in front of people, but he's also dedicated to helping advisors become better and offers one-on-one evaluation and training programs. You can send him videos of your seminar. He'll critique it. Um, a great resource to consider. But his harbor pilot analogy is, I think, a powerful one. Talks about, look, you've been on the open ocean for a long time, accumulating money, right? Now it's time to sail into the harbor. You need somebody who's familiar with the dangers of the harbor, which is different than the open ocean. You need a harbor pilot to guide you safely to shore. I'm not going to do the whole thing because I'm not Frank Maselli, but ultimately, like having an analogy that works, that's powerful, that makes sense. At the Acquire Up conference, we saw Brad Gatto, who's done a terrific job up in Minnesota, um, talk about the Mount Everest, right? More people die descending from Everest than do on the ascent, right? I am a specialist in getting you off the mountain. I am a specialist in retirement planning. Um, so you can use ones that have already been used. There's a chance you've got somebody who's attended multiple seminars in your community and knows that, hey, this is the same one that this guy used. Well, they're not going to be your client anyway because they're here to eat dinner, right? So I wouldn't be afraid of that. Good artists borrow, great artists steal. I wouldn't reinvent things. Use what works, but make it your own. Um, Frank, last time we heard him speak, talked about storytelling. This idea of inside baseball, right? Telling something about the financial services industry that, hey, only us insiders know, but doing it intentionally to prove a point. Humor only if you're funny. I probably could use some of Frank's advice here. Hard to tell if the jokes are landing in this format, but um, I would say that the opportunity to be yourself, right, and demonstrate who you are, embrace that and own it once again as a takeaway. So, appointment setting. I mentioned it earlier, a point where a lot of these fail, right? We've done all this work, we paid all the money, we've got the people there, we did a great job. We got to get them into the office to meet with them so we can convert them to clients. So, having a process for not just the actual appointment setting, but again, what to expect as a client. So, what I would recommend is, one that I've used or we've seen other advisors use is, hey, when we meet, I want you to bring with you X, Y, Z. These are non-negotiables. I need statements. I need copies of all your policies in order for me to do anything of value for you, right? Additionally, on the checkout sheet, I'm going to steal this one from Brad Gatto. I think it was brilliant. Here are the topics that we cover in my practice, right? This presentation was just about X, but we do all of these things. Some of these are addressed from the presentation, some of them aren't. Which of these would you like to talk about, right? And he doesn't just say that and then say, if you'd like to talk, let me know. I mean, he sits there with it and drills down and says, which of these keeps you up at night? Which of these is most important? And then he goes through them one by one. I mean, to the point that it's almost awkward if you didn't select something, right? How could you not have a concern? You came to my dinner seminar, like why not? And that just drives that call to action, right? And then taking that one step further, again, We don't ask you to bring statements. We instruct you to bring statements, or even better, upload them ahead of time so that we can do some preliminary review, because without information from you, I can't help you, right? And then client meeting. Make sure there's continuity of experience from the presentation through to the client meeting, right? Deliver on the things that you promised and spend time crafting your presentation to close to that appointment, right? I mean, just standing up there and educating them about the dangers of taxes in retirement, or the importance of long-term care planning, or how to generate income in retirement. Like, okay, that's valuable, but that doesn't necessarily make somebody incentivized to become a client, right? They need an emotional connection. They need a call to action. They need something that changes them from nothing to taking action. Um, and part of that is laying out the process of what to expect and auditioning and demonstrating what it's like to be a client. And then follow-ups, right? I mean, every no that we get to an appointment is a future prospect. We know this. Chelsea talked about this, ad nauseum in some of the other meetings or some of the other business development sessions. She's probably talked about it in one-on-one business development planning with many of you. A no right now is often a no for now, right? They took the time to come to the seminar. They were interested a little bit, right? We need to stay on top of them with drip marketing campaigns, calls, outreaches, whatever you're doing within your practice for outbound strategic follow-ups. We need to apply that to everybody that comes into a seminar. And frankly, it would make sense to segment them within the CRM so we have targeted messaging that corresponds with the things we talked about in the seminar. If you don't have a software for that, if you don't have a process for that, I'd encourage you to reach out to us, because we have a number of resources here at Sequent, at SMS, and at FFIG that can help. So, evaluation, and I do not mean the form that you give out that says, "How did I do?" Right? Did you find the seminar useful or valuable? Um, I'm stealing this one from Frank too. Of course, they said that they found it valuable, that you did a good job. They're nice. They just ate your food. They just spent an hour with you. They're not going to say, "Yeah, this was terrible." I mean, maybe they will. God bless them, right? But they're going to say, "Yeah, you did a good job." The only real feedback you need from the client, from the prospect, is if they become a client, right? If they book the meeting and they engage with you in the meeting, and then you're able to convert them. I'm not trying to be too cynical here, but like, we're not in it for their compliments. We're in it for their ability to become a client. But what is important here is self-evaluation, right? If you're like me, you're your own harshest critic. I cannot wait to go back and watch this recording and pick myself apart. Um, but really, I mean, if you record your presentations, whether you send them to somebody else or not, you will pick up plenty of opportunities to improve your delivery, your style, your tone, your tenor. Every one of those little improvements makes you a more effective presenter, gets you more likely to book appointments and more likely to close them. And again, I can't do that with one seminar. I can't do it with three. I could barely do it with six, right? We need commitment to it on an ongoing basis to gather the data to be able to do the evaluation for improvement. And then let's evaluate the seminar itself, right? The process. If we host a seminar and nobody shows up, we have a marketing problem, right? If we did it ourselves, what did we do wrong? Well, there's probably a number of things, right? Maybe that's now time to find a vendor partner. If we did it with a vendor, what program are we using? Should we be switching to a different platform? Did we take their advice on what topics to cover, what topics to not cover, right? Are we spending enough? Like, those are marketing problems. Some of them are insurmountable, but very few of them are, right? I mean, we can address the majority of those marketing problems. Now, if you have attendees but no appointments, that's probably a presentation problem. You had a room full of 30 people and nobody wanted to meet with you. Right? Maybe it's time to bring somebody else from the office in to do the presentations. But seriously, I mean, that is also why you need sample, because you might do the next one and get 30 people and get 6 appointments. And now we got 3 per, and that's a pretty good clip, right? So segmenting this out, right? And then if we have appointments, but no conversion, no production, no business, that really has nothing to do with the seminar, right? I mean, we knew they were qualified. They checked all the boxes for us to be a candidate, to be invited to the seminar. They showed up, they sat through it, they booked a meeting, and I can't close them. Right? We've got a problem. And that doesn't mean that we're bad closers, but it could mean we have a lack of continuity from our presentation to our delivery at the appointment, right? We set one expectation and didn't fulfill it. We weren't delivering on what we promised. We appeared to be one way, and then we got to the office and we were completely different, right? I mean, there's a number of different things that can lead to it. But I would also add, again, I don't know how many more times I could say it, sample size, right? If I only do a few and I'm not getting any closing, I mean, we need more reps to see what our actual closing rate is. If I could just close two more and it shoots my closing rate to 10%, that's not a statistically significant indicator, right? So self-evaluation, self-inventory of both ourselves and the process is a part of improvement and um, our inevitable goal of increasing that closing ratio. So resources, there's plenty at our disposal. For the SMS folks, first call needs to be to the marketing consultant, right? They are plugged in with all of the vendors, all of the platforms at their disposal, and the same would go for FFIG and FFWN, right? FFWM, the GMs, the internal support team, Kevin and all them, reach out to them, right? Because they have also been at these attendees alongside, or at these events alongside SMS. We are all on board with this idea that seminars are, the opportunity right now to add significant growth to the practice, coupled with the other things we've covered in this series to date, including COIs and referrals. I mean, these are, multiple revenue streams, multiple lead flows. But if you're not incorporating seminars yet, I think you got a huge opportunity. I mentioned Acquire Up, I mentioned Launchpad. I would look at all of those various vendors. Again, it's going to be relative to our overall marketing budget, how much we're comfortable spending in order to generate new leads, but money well spent, in my opinion. And then Frank Masalio, I've alluded to a number of times. Again, he does have some free stuff available. His advisor toolbox, he promotes it at every event. I mean, he's a business person as well, so there's an incentive to get you guys to sign up and join the subscriptions. But I tend to think he has a lot of good insights about the power of using emotion in your presentation, right? Connecting with people, finding those lever points. And that again takes practice and no shame in leveraging a pro or an expert to improve. So that's all I have in summary. Seminars are terrific. They're worth it if we are intentional, if we're systematic, if we do the math, we have a plan, and we execute, we can see significant growth. So I'm going to stop sharing. We're a couple of minutes earlier than I anticipated, but I suppose Chelsea's opinion is that we stop recording because Q&A is for attendees in the same way that coffee is for closers.